Welcome back, everyone, to the channel. This is Charlie. He's my boy. He's going to be my little assistant today. Again, got the day off, so we're going to do some, we will get to some archery shooting a little bit later, but today I was thinking about cooking up some sausage. Not you, dude. I promise. Just kidding. So, hey, just a little tidbit out there. I mean, you guys out there, surprise your wife every once in a while. I mean, this isn't necessarily a surprise. She kind of picked out the thing. So just the little things in life make life better, make life happier. So what I got here is I got some chicken, I got some beans, some corn, and all that. It's cold outside, so I'm gonna throw in a crock pot recipe. Get that all cooking and simmering. We're gonna go shoot some bows over at Easton again. There's actually a 3D shoot that's coming up this weekend. I know I said I was going to shoot my recurve bow, but I want to play with my compound and shoot. So I also want to kind of get into the different seasons when it comes to archery. Archery is a year-round sport. That's why I love it so much, because you can do indoor, outdoor. You got 3D. You got hunting. It's not just a one-done deal. And then also like different setups. What's the difference between an indoor setup and an outdoor setup? Or what's the best? I mean, I'm just going to play out or kind of throw out a few different ideas. But first, I got to get these birdies cooking. So by the time I get home and get done shooting and all that, get some grub. So I'm going to go ahead and get all this managed all together. So you guys out there, cook for your wives. They love it. Do the dishes too. Right? I gotta remember to do the dishes. So, you'll be back in a snip. Welcome back, guys. Quick shout out to the Easton Salt Lake Archery Center for letting me borrow one of the rooms here so I can have some one-on-one time with you guys, so we can kind of talk about again, the different types of seasons in archery, and also what arrows would generally be the best for certain shoots. I'm going to focus a little bit more today as far as more on the compound side of things. I've got my little base over there, and then wow. You ever have that happen where you have a real good plan, train of thought, and then all of a sudden, anyway, starting over. So the different types of seasons in archery. So you have your indoor season, which is generally shot at 20 yards. There's generally two different types of games. There's a 3-spot target and then a 5-spot target. Now, depending on which one you actually go for, there are limits as far as the arrow diameter. Now, what I mean by that, so again, I have a whole array of different arrows here. I'll kind of tilt this guy down here. So I have kind of your micros or skinnies over here, and then just kind of gets bigger, 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 and then I've got some freaking tree trunks over here. This guy's almost a tent pole. So this guy versus my micro, if I can put them side by side, yeah, huge difference. But why is one bigger than the other? What's better as far as like being able to shoot? And that's probably the biggest thing I wanted to try and kind of go over today was what's the benefit of having a giant 10 pole of an arrow versus a super skinny guy? So when it comes to shooting indoor archery, again, you're shooting at 20 yards, which isn't too far. The reason why you would want to shoot a giant 10 pole of an arrow like this is because, in scoring with archery, if you can break the line on the little target here, I'll throw one off to the side here, but if you can cut or break the line of that ring, then you get that higher point, you get that higher score. And so everybody's always pushing to hit that X or hit that 10 or hit that X, and so a bigger, fatter shaft like this, you have more likely of a chance of actually getting that. So this is what we consider a 27-12. This is about the biggest arrow shaft that you can get out there that's that's legal for tournaments. I pretty much have to go through the different spines as well. Okay, so what I mean by 27-12, so I'll go back to this guy. So 27-12. 27 is the actual diameter of the shaft. The 12 actually stands for the thickness, or the wall thickness of the arrow. And so the higher the number, the thicker the wall and bigger the diameter. So 27, 12, so 27 diameter, 12 thickness. Is there a benefit to one versus the other? Again, basically the bigger the number, the stiffer the arrow is going to be. So that's why when I have this big or this stiff of an arrow, I don't cut off, or I don't cut it to my draw length. I leave it as long as possible, because when this thing flies, it's a freaking tree trunk basically. And so I leave all that extra weight down there, so it weakens it enough so I can actually shoot a halfway decent shot. Now again, the 25/11, so 25 again being the diameter, so a little bit smaller, and then the 11 being again the wall thickness there. So this is good kind of middle shaft. Mostly, most tournaments people shoot. They're usually restricted where you can either shoot the 27s or you can shoot the 23s. So the 25 really isn't used all too much, but again, it just depends on kind of the spine of your bow. Like if you're like a shorter, smaller person, you may not be able to really shoot these arrows. No matter how long you leave them cut, they're still going to be way too stiff to be able to shoot, and it's just the flight is going to be completely terrible. So if you're a smaller, shorter person, but you still want to get that advantage of that larger diameter, 25 may not be bad for your bow. When you're shooting target archery, don't overdo it. Honestly, this guy's only 60 pounds, and that's really all you need. I mean, if you're going to be shooting, tournaments, that span for multiple days, you want to be able to shoot comfortably for a period of time. And so, again, the 23 diameters, I think what they mostly use in what they call the Vegas round. I think they may, I'll have to double check. But basically, if you sign up for any tournaments, double check the rules, double check to see what kind of diameters you can get away with, so that you can get that extra advantage. Now, the other side of things. Now, all of these are mostly aluminum that I have. You can also get all carbon shafts. This is actually an old Fat Boy. Carbon shafts, I think, are a lot of fun. They're super light, so you can get again that thick diameter. But if you're shooting a lot lighter draw bow, a carbon arrow may be a little bit nicer because it's a bit lighter. So that way you're trying to huck a tree trunk. It's not going to be as efficient versus shooting something that's a little bit lighter. If you're only shooting 40 pounds and having to get to a certain distance. Again, most indoor shoots are only 20 yards. Or one of the other seasons in archery is 3D. So 3D is usually, you can honestly really shoot 3D at any time. There's actually a shoot this weekend for 3D, and it's actually indoor. There's a giant horse arena that they take 3D animal targets and they post them all over the place at different yardages. You just go around and shoot them. Now again, if you're shooting something like that and you want to try and get some line cutters, the 23s work really well. Me personally, I hate shooting a fat shaft with 3D. The only reason being is because usually when you're shooting 3D, you're usually paired up with a bunch of people, because there's a ton of people who show up and they want to try and get as many, or at least 4 people on a target maybe. The issue with a big old fat shaft like this is a really tasty treat for the jerks shooting next to you. Usually, in this case, my brother, or whoever you go shooting with. So because you shoot a fat log down like this down there, that's a beautiful target. So I've had more Robin Hood, or seen more Robin Hoods with the fat shaft Fat Boy like this than any other arrow, just for the fact that it's huge and they just split down the back. Not to mention you get 4 guys shooting at the same target at the same time. It can get kind of messy and can really hurt you on arrows, really. So personally, I like to shoot kind of like your standard size arrow versus or your micros. So standard size, this is one example. This is the Easton Hex. There's also the Axis arrow. I mean, just look at your standard thread type of arrow. Gold Tip has some really good ones as well. So there's the Gold Tip. They have the Hunter series, which is a good bargain price. There's also the Pierce. The Gold Tip Pierce are actually a really good arrow too. They're kind of like the more micro side, like your Access arrow for Easton. But basically, a medium shaft like this, again, it's all based on shot placement. The beauty about when it comes to 3D archery is, and I'll throw a little 3D animal up here just in case, is you actually get a bigger diameter of a target zone. Versus with your 3-spot, it's a lot smaller. Or your X is about this big versus your 10 points on a 3D animal is this big. So again, it's all based off of shot placement. So you can get away with a medium type or medium shaft arrow like this. Just take your time and actually go out and practice and go play with it. Just don't suck, basically. Sorry. The other one is, again, you have your micro arrow. Now, the benefit of shooting your thinner shafts versus a thicker shaft, especially because a lot of 3D shoots, the one that I'm going to be going to this weekend is going to be an indoor shoot, but a lot of 3D is actually shot outside. And an archer's worst nightmare when it comes to shooting is wind. It's an absolute, everybody hates, give me rain, give me snow, I'll shoot in whatever type of element, but you throw some wind out there and that's where it's about as good of a kick in the pants as you can think of. Now, when you're shooting indoor, as you notice, like these are some really big old fat veins, they're long. Again, you're shooting 20 yards, so the reason why you have a big vein like this is because you want the arrow to correct itself, because when you shoot, it's going to wiggle, it's going to kind of wiggle. If you put it in slow motion, it's actually really kind of cool. But you want to put a really big stiff vein on here, put a real tight helical on it, so that way the vein corrects the shaft as fast as possible, so within that 20-yard distance you can again keep your groups as tight as possible. Now when you're shooting outdoors, I've actually literally seen these arrows shot outside when the wind's blowing, and I've seen the arrow go from here to here before it hits the target. It's absolutely crazy. So because it's so big, there's so much more surface area for the arrow to be drug along, whereas these guys get away with it. And the reason why you have a little bit shorter veins up here is, again, that wind resistance. So if the wind's blowing against this side here, you have enough vein there to steer the arrow where you want it to go, but it's not going to be carried away in the gale or whatever. And that's where I like my micros, because again, you get that super tiny, tiny arrow like this. I throw a heavy tip on the front of it, skinny little veins on the back, a little tiny, just so that there's enough to steer the back end, but the weight up front is carrying the kinetic energy of the arrow forward. There's a ton behind this, and I apologize if I'm, just kind of word vomiting a whole lot of stuff here, but I hope some of it is helpful here. The fat shafts like this, I keep for paper, or for shooting 3 spots, 5 spots, so you got 1 arrow per spot on the target. If you're shooting multiple arrows are going to the same spot, I like a smaller shaft, just so that, I don't have to replace arrows every time I go to a tournament or a shoot or whatever. Now, when it comes to hunting, a lot of people, when it comes to hunting, like fat shafts are done. They're out of the picture. That's when I go to these guys here. So your regular and your micros. When it comes to, the biggest thing when it comes to shooting or for hunting and all that, again, you have to think about wind, and you also have to think about penetration, or again, trying to make an ethical kill. Now, you also want to look at the weight of the arrow as well. This particular arrow is an Easton Hex. This one is, there's actually, sometimes they put numbers on there. This is a 7.2, I can't even see. Yeah, so it's a 400 spine, so good for 60 pounds, or for 50 pounds, 60 pounds. It's a 7.2 grains per inch, super, super light. Versus my injections here, which these ones are a 9.8. So it's still a fairly decent heavy arrow, but I put a 125 grain tip on the front there. So keep it nice and heavy. So if you're a big open place, this is going to cut through the wind a lot better versus a lighter type arrow. Plus, when it comes to actually, again, trying to make an ethical kill or trying to get a good shot on an animal, you want to also try and get a good penetration, or good penetration. And you also, so kinetic energy is a real big factor when it comes to that. And so that's why I like to have a little bit heavier of a tip, because this is a good 3D. This is a good 3D arrow, because it's light, it's fast, I can hit the target, and I'm not worried about how deep it hits or how well it's going to affect the target. That's why I love the micro series like this, or this is a deep 6 version. Your axis arrow is also so the Easton axis and the gold tip Pierce are also kind of a micro shaft too that work really well. They're really good and tough. But those work really well when it comes to the penetration. It's a good, strong, durable arrow. You know, I'm putting some decent pressure on that, and that's got some really good hard flex to it. So that's my personal kind of preference or view on all that. Let me know what you think. What are your favorite type of arrows to shoot during what season? Do you have any shoots that are coming up? I'd love to hear from you guys. Thanks for tuning in again to Luthi's Archery TV. Again, we'll see you next time. Keep it up.